There are exactly 7 statements that can make a narcissist step back from you as if you've just revealed a sacred symbol to something that thrives in darkness. The real strength of these statements is not that they are cruel or offensive, but that they are rooted in truth. And more than anything else, narcissists are deeply unsettled by the truth. Let's be completely honest about that. Most people fail, and fail badly, when they try to confront a narcissist. The reason is simple. They step into a battlefield designed by the narcissist, using tools that not only don't work, but actually empower the other side. You bring your emotions, your sense of fairness, your desire for peace and clarity into the interaction. But to a narcissist, these are not bridges to understanding. They are openings to exploit. You are essentially trying to have a calm, rational discussion with a raging storm. It's a losing effort. The core mistake is straightforward. You believe you are in a conversation, when in reality you are in a psychological struggle. The narcissist creates a distorted version of reality where they are always the central, wronged hero, and you are the flawed, confused, and obligated supporting character. Every emotional reaction you show, whether it's frustration, sadness, or pleading, becomes proof that you are operating within their constructed world. You are confirming their version of reality simply by engaging with it. And within that space, they will always dominate. The real shift in power begins the moment you stop reacting impulsively and start responding with intention. A reaction is immediate and uncontrolled, like a sudden outburst or surge of emotion. A response, however, is calm, deliberate, and chosen. It is the decision to reject their version of reality and stand firmly in your own. This is where language becomes your most effective instrument. Not as a weapon to attack, but as a foundation to build something solid and unshakable. When you understand this, you begin to see why it works. To truly grasp it, you need to understand what fuels narcissistic behavior at its core. Beneath the confidence and self-praise lies something very different. It is not your anger they fear, nor your logic. What they fear most is exposure. Their entire personality is like a carefully constructed shield, built piece by piece to hide a deep sense of inadequacy and shame. It may look impressive on the outside, but it is fragile at its core. This is not meant to excuse their behavior. It is simply an important observation. Their greatest fear is that someone will notice the cracks, that someone will see beyond the image and recognize the truth they are trying so hard to conceal. They live with a constant fear of being truly seen. That is why certain words, when spoken calmly and clearly, can trigger such a strong reaction. These words do not attack. They reveal. They act like a mirror, reflecting back something the narcissist does not want to face. In that moment, they are forced to confront not the idealized image they project, but the uncomfortable reality beneath it. This touches directly on the psychology of shame. They are not afraid you will hurt them physically or emotionally in the usual sense. They are afraid you will see them clearly, and that this clarity will weaken the illusion they depend on. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever said something simple to a difficult person that suddenly made them stop? Maybe you weren't even trying to win an argument. Perhaps you were just tired and spoke plainly, and suddenly the tension disappeared. There is a pattern behind that, a deeper psychological principle at work. Consider what you said, how you said it, and what happened next. You may have already experienced this dynamic without realizing it. This brings us to the idea of verbal boundaries. Setting a boundary through language is not aggression. Aggression tries to control or harm someone else. A clear, assertive statement of truth is about controlling yourself. It is about refusing to let someone else define your reality. Imagine it as a line drawn on the ground. Aggression is stepping into someone else's space. A boundary is standing firmly in your own and stating calmly that the line will not be crossed. The words themselves are only part of the equation. Your tone and delivery give them power. If you shout your boundary in anger, it stops being a boundary and becomes an invitation to conflict. It signals that you are still operating emotionally, which is exactly where the narcissist wants you. But when you speak with calm certainty, without hostility or hesitation, it creates something entirely different. It disrupts the pattern they rely on. It's like presenting a problem that cannot be solved within their usual rules. Your calm presence reflects their chaos back to them, and that is something they struggle to handle. When you learn to do this consistently, the change is significant. It's not just about handling one difficult person. It becomes a shift in who you are. The respect you begin to receive is not something others suddenly decide to give you. It emerges naturally from your own self-respect. You stop being part of their game because you choose not to play. You move from being a character in someone else's story to becoming the one who writes your own. There is also an uncomfortable truth worth considering. Narcissists do not target you because you are weak. In many cases, it is the opposite. They sense that you have something they lack, something they cannot genuinely possess. That is authentic self-worth, and that deeply unsettles them. Their choice of target is rarely random. It is often calculated, even if unconsciously. Think of it like a predator observing a group. They do not always go after the weakest. Sometimes they are drawn to those with the most energy, the most presence, because that is where the greatest gain appears to be. Your empathy is one of the strongest signals. Your ability to understand, to care, to give others the benefit of the doubt is something they recognize immediately. To you, it is a strength. To them, it is an opportunity. Your competence is another factor. You are capable, disciplined, and effective in what you do. This becomes something they want to attach themselves to or take credit for. It supports the image they are trying to maintain, and then there is your integrity. Your commitment to honesty and doing what is right makes it difficult for you to imagine someone acting without those same values. This creates a blind spot. This is where the dynamic becomes twisted. The very qualities that make you strong also make you vulnerable in this specific situation. The narcissist is drawn to your authenticity, but not to appreciate it. They are drawn to it because it reminds them of what they lack. They may try to absorb it, control it, or if that fails, diminish it so it no longer threatens them. Once they identify a target, they rarely begin with obvious aggression. Instead, they test. These tests are subtle. A slightly dismissive comment, a forgotten promise, a joke that feels just a bit too sharp. Each one is a small experiment. They are quietly asking whether you will tolerate it, whether you will overlook it, whether you will stay silent to keep things smooth. Your response provides the answer. If you laugh it off, excuse the behavior, or ignore it to avoid tension, you are giving them valuable information. You are showing them that the boundary is not firmly set. And once they learn that, the behavior often escalates. You have essentially shown them the outline of your boundaries, and using that information, they begin to push further. The missed promise slowly turns into a broken commitment. The sarcastic remark evolves into open humiliation, sometimes even in front of others. It becomes a gradual, step-by-step invasion of your personal space. This is what separates normal disagreements from the calculated disrespect of a narcissist. In a healthy relationship, conflict appears and gets resolved through mutual effort. But with a narcissist, it is not a disagreement. It is a deliberate campaign. It is a steady dismantling of your standards, one small act at a time, until you realize you are standing in a place you once promised yourself you would never reach. This pattern is what can be called the disrespect cycle, and it is a form of psychological manipulation that can be deeply damaging. It begins with something small. You feel a slight irritation or discomfort, but you choose to ignore it. You tell yourself it is not worth making an issue out of something so minor. That one small moment, once accepted, becomes the new baseline for how you are treated. From there, each new violation becomes slightly worse than the last. The narcissist depends on this gradual increase because it reinforces their distorted sense of entitlement. In their world, they deserve special treatment, and your silence becomes agreement. You are slowly conditioned to accept what you would normally reject. Every time you fail to hold your ground, that ground shifts. What is most unsettling is how quickly this adjustment can happen. The human mind is built to adapt, but that same ability can be used against you. When disrespect is constant and slowly increasing, it starts to feel normal. Living in a state of tension, walking on eggshells, constantly adjusting your behavior to avoid conflict. All of this becomes your everyday experience. Over time, you forget what it feels like to be treated with simple respect. The abnormal quietly becomes your new normal. So, why do thoughtful, kind, and self-aware people struggle to see this happening in real time? The answer lies in your own internal patterns, your natural desire for harmony, your tendency to smooth things over, and your willingness to see the good in others all work against you here. You project your own honesty and kindness onto them. You assume they must not mean harm. You tell yourself they are just having a bad day. This creates a form of self-deception, because accepting that someone is deliberately disrespecting you is deeply uncomfortable. This leads to a powerful sense of self-doubt. You begin to question your own perception. You wonder if you are being overly sensitive or if you are exaggerating the situation. This is one of the narcissist's most effective tactics. They shift the focus away from their behavior and onto your reaction. Slowly, you stop trusting your own judgment. You become uncertain about your own reality, almost like an unreliable narrator in your own life. But eventually, there comes a breaking point. It might be a moment of such clear disrespect that it cuts through all the confusion. It is the instant when all the small incidents come together and reveal the full pattern. In that moment, everything becomes clear in a way that is both shocking and undeniable. You realize that something has to change, and that change does not begin with them. It begins with you. What follows are not insults or attempts to hurt. These are precise expressions of truth. When you use these statements, you are not attacking. You are defining reality. And for a narcissist, reality is the one thing they cannot easily control. The first statement is simple yet powerful. I see what you are doing. There are few phrases more unsettling to someone who manipulates than this one. Their entire approach depends on staying hidden behind confusion and plausible deniability. They rely on subtle remarks and indirect actions so they can always deny intent. When you say this, you cut straight through that strategy. You are not arguing or explaining. You are simply stating awareness. You are showing that you are not confused and not easily controlled. You do not need to explain further. The strength of this statement lies in its calm certainty. It communicates that you recognize the pattern and that recognition alone shifts the balance of power. Their main tool, the mask of innocence, is no longer effective. The second statement is this: that is not my responsibility. A narcissist often shifts their burdens onto others. Their mistakes, their emotions, their problems somehow become your fault or your duty to fix. They expect you to carry what belongs to them. This statement returns that weight back where it belongs. It draws a clear boundary around what is yours and what is not. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, especially if you are someone who naturally wants to help. But there is a difference between supporting someone and enabling them. Taking on their responsibilities does not help them grow. It keeps the cycle going. When you refuse to carry what is not yours, you are not being cold. You are being clear. You are allowing them to face the results of their own choices. The third statement is direct and firm. I will not be spoken to that way. This is not a request or a negotiation. It is a standard. Narcissists test your limits through small acts of disrespect, gradually increasing their behavior if it is tolerated. This statement stops that progression immediately. The key is in how it is delivered. It must be calm and steady, not emotional or reactive. When spoken with anger, it invites further conflict. But when spoken with quiet certainty, it closes the door on that behavior. It does not threaten or argue. It simply defines what is acceptable and what is not. It reflects self-respect in its purest form. It communicates that respect is a requirement, not a favor. The fourth statement is one that can feel especially difficult. Your feelings about this are not my problem. Narcissists often use their emotions as tools. Whether it is anger, sadness, or dramatic displays, these reactions are used to influence and control. They want you to feel responsible for how they feel. They want you to fix it. This statement breaks that pattern. It establishes emotional independence. It recognizes that every individual is responsible for their own emotional state. This does not mean you lack empathy. It means you are not allowing someone else's emotional reactions to dictate your behavior. By stepping out of that role, you remove one of their strongest methods of control. The fifth statement is this: I do not need to justify myself to you. Many people find themselves trapped in endless explanations when dealing with a narcissist. You try to clarify your decisions, defend your actions, and make yourself understood. But this only feeds the cycle. The more you explain, the more material they have to twist and use against you. This statement is your exit from that pattern. It is a refusal to be placed in a position where you must constantly defend yourself. It communicates that your choices do not require their approval to be valid. It ends the cycle of over-explaining and removes you from a conversation designed to keep you stuck. It communicates that you are the final authority in your own life. Your decisions belong to you. Your reasoning belongs to you. You do not require their approval or their permission to stand by what you choose. Remaining grounded in the quiet confidence of your own decisions without chasing their validation places you in an incredibly strong position that they cannot easily influence. Statement 6 is simple but powerful. This conversation is over. It acts as an immediate exit when a discussion turns into a confusing loop, an exhausting stream of words meant to dominate rather than communicate. You are not required to stay in a conversation that has no purpose. You are not obligated to sit through their distorted reasoning or manipulative tactics. Saying this conversation is over and then physically removing yourself by leaving the room or ending the call is the clearest demonstration of a boundary in action. It proves that your time and mental energy are valuable, and you refuse to waste them on interactions that are harmful or pointless. More importantly, it shows through action that your words carry weight. You are not just stating limits. You are enforcing them. That combination of clarity and follow-through is what makes this statement so effective. Statement 7 is perhaps the most disruptive of all. I am not interested in your opinion of me. This strikes at the very center of the narcissistic dynamic. From their perspective, the relationship exists with them as the judge and you as the one being evaluated. Their power depends on your need for their approval and your fear of their criticism. Their opinion becomes the currency they use to maintain control. When you calmly state that their opinion is irrelevant, you remove that currency entirely. You are declaring independence from their judgment. This is not something said out of frustration. It reflects a deeper internal shift. It shows that you have developed your own sense of identity, your own standards, and your own measure of self-worth. Their evaluation is no longer needed. This is where real freedom begins. It is the point where you stop looking to them as a mirror and begin to see yourself clearly on your own terms. The reason these statements have such a strong impact is not because they are harsh, it is because they challenge the central illusion that supports the narcissist's identity. To understand this fully, you have to look at the structure of their mindset. At the core, there is what can be described as a false self. It is an inflated, carefully constructed identity designed for one main purpose: to constantly seek external validation, often referred to as narcissistic supply. This false self is like a character they have created. It appears confident, superior, and often uniquely wronged or important. But the critical truth is that it has no stable foundation. It is hollow. Like any illusion, it depends on constant reinforcement from others to stay intact. Without admiration, attention, or validation, it begins to weaken. This need is not simple arrogance. It is a deep dependency. When you challenge them with clear boundaries or refuse to participate in their patterns, it is not seen as a minor disagreement. To them, it is a threat to the entire structure they rely on. It is like a crack forming in something they have worked hard to maintain. When you say, "I see what you are doing," or "that is not my responsibility," you are refusing to play your part in maintaining their illusion. You are no longer reinforcing the image they depend on. This is where the difference between genuine self-confidence and fragile grandiosity becomes clear. A confident person has an internal source of stability. Their sense of self comes from within, built through experience and self-awareness. A narcissistic personality, however, relies entirely on external reactions. Their identity is shaped by how others respond to them. Without that reflection, they struggle to maintain a sense of self. When you speak with clarity and truth, you are not attacking their strength. You are revealing the absence of it. Beneath the surface of that grand image lies something they are trying to hide. At the core is a deep and persistent sense of shame. It is a belief, often buried but powerful, that they are not enough. This is the unresolved wound their behavior is built around. They spend their lives trying to escape this feeling, constructing an alternate version of themselves that is everything they fear they are not. The statements discussed earlier are effective because they bypass the outer image and touch this hidden core. When you refuse to accept blame, you reflect their responsibility back to them. When you refuse to manage their emotions, you force them to face their own internal state. When you reject their judgment, you show that it holds no real value. Each of these actions creates a form of exposure, and exposure activates that deep sense of shame they work so hard to avoid. It forces them, even if briefly, to confront a version of themselves they do not want to see. This is a psychological state they are not equipped to handle comfortably. Their defenses exist specifically to avoid this kind of awareness. Being truly seen feels threatening to their entire identity. Your calm and clear statements of reality cut through the illusion and bring them face to face with something they have spent years avoiding. This is why such simple phrases can have such a strong effect. It is not about complexity or cleverness. It is about clarity. Narcissists often maintain control through confusion and doubt. They use circular arguments, vague reasoning, and emotional manipulation to create a sense of instability. This confusion makes you question your own understanding. When you are unsure, they gain control because they define what is real. Clear and direct language disrupts this completely. Statements like "this conversation is over" or I do not need to justify myself, refuse to engage in confusion. They bring clarity into a situation designed to be unclear. You are no longer participating in their system. You are stepping outside of it. By refusing to engage, you remove the foundation their control depends on. Their strategies rely on your involvement. Once you withdraw that involvement, their behavior becomes easier to see for what it is. It loses its power. Boundaries force them into a space where they are not in control, and that is a position they struggle with. There is also a strong psychological effect that occurs when you respond to their behavior with calm steadiness. Your response acts as a mirror. Narcissists often project their own traits onto others. They may accuse you of being angry when they are the ones expressing rage, or call you manipulative when they are the ones controlling the situation. This allows them to avoid facing their own behavior. When you remain calm and grounded, you interrupt this pattern. You do not accept the projection. Instead, it reflects back to them. Your calmness highlights their instability. Your clarity reveals their confusion. Your consistency exposes their contradictions. For a brief moment, they are faced with an accurate reflection of themselves. This reflection creates discomfort because it challenges the image they try to maintain. It forces them to confront aspects of themselves they would rather ignore. Your refusal to absorb their emotions means they must experience those emotions themselves. This shift is not just symbolic, it has a real impact on how the dynamic functions. It is not simply a matter of winning or losing an argument. It is about changing the entire structure of the interaction. When you stop participating in the patterns that sustain their behavior, those patterns begin to weaken. What once felt overwhelming starts to lose its intensity. Your clarity becomes a stabilizing force in a situation that once felt chaotic.